In the ancient world of the Gaelic people, time itself had two faces. One was bright and alive, filled with warmth, growth, and the green breath of summer. The other was dark and silent, the cold face of winter. And the line that divided the two wasn't gentle. It was sharp, sudden, and sacred. It was the night when light gave way to shadow, when the living world brushed against the world of spirits. As the last harvest was gathered from the fading fields, and the cattle were driven down from their summer pastures, a strange stillness fell across the land. The days grew short, the light turned thin and silver, and the night stretched long and cold. To the ancient people of Ireland and Scotland, this wasn't just a change in weather, it was a shift in reality itself. They believed that beyond what human eyes could see, another realm existed, the Otherworld, hidden beneath moss-covered hills and ancient mounds. It was a place of beauty and danger, home to the ancestors, the old gods, and the fairy folk known as the Aos Sí. For most of the year, the boundary between worlds held firm. But on the night of Samhain, that veil dissolved. The hidden doors of the hills were said to open, spilling strange, shimmering light onto the darkened land. Through those openings, the spirits could cross freely into the mortal world. The dead were drawn back to the homes they once knew, to sit unseen beside the hearths of their descendants. It was a night when ghosts walked, when magic was near, and when the laws of nature fell silent. Yet this nearness of spirits was both blessing and danger. The living feared to be recognized by malevolent forces wandering the roads and fields, so they hid behind masks and disguises, hoping to fool whatever might cross their path. Offerings of food and drink were left outside for the visiting dead, gifts meant to appease and honor them. And at the heart of every village, a single fire was lit, the sacred bonfire of Samhain. In that moment, every household hearth across the land was extinguished, leaving the countryside in darkness. From a single spark, a new fire was kindled on a high hill, born from pure wood and sacred rite. The people gathered around it, their faces painted by flickering light, their hearts heavy with reverence and fear. They walked themselves and their animals between two blazing pyres, believing the smoke would purify them, drive away sickness, and shield them from the wandering spirits of the night. From that great communal fire, each family carried home a glowing ember to reignite their own hearth, a symbol of renewal and unity for the long winter ahead. To those ancient eyes, the land itself was alive. Every twisted oak, every mist-shrouded bog, every hill crowned with stones held a pulse of spirit. Among these sacred places, one was feared above all, the Cave of the Cats, Owainagat, in modern Roscommon. Legends claimed that it was no ordinary cavern, but a gateway to the Otherworld itself. On Samhain night, creatures of nightmare were said to emerge from its depths and roam the world above. Centuries later, archaeologists would uncover piles of animal bones near its entrance, silent echoes of offerings once made to calm whatever ancient power stirred within the dark. But the story of Samhain reaches even deeper into time. At the hill of Tara, seat of the old High Kings, stands a tomb older than the pyramids, the Mound of the Hostages. Its stone passage aligns perfectly with the rising sun on the morning of Samhain. On that day, the first rays of winter light stream down the corridor and strike the chamber where the ashes of the long dead lie waiting. Whether this was deliberate or not, the image is haunting, the newborn sun awakening the spirits of the departed, as if the living and the dead greet each other at the turning of the year. Faced with the mystery of life and death, the people of the old world didn't turn away. They met it with ritual, with story, and with fire. Samhain was their answer to the darkness, a night to honor what came before and to prepare for the cold to come. It was the hinge upon which their world turned, the threshold between what is and what might be. And yet, if you walk through the modern world on that same night, the ancient silence has been replaced with laughter and neon light. Children in plastic masks wander the streets, their hands clutching bags of candy. Fake tombstones stand on suburban lawns, and glowing pumpkins grin beneath electric bulbs. Halloween, they call it now, a billion-dollar festival of tricks and treats, where ghosts have become decoration and the old fires burn only for show. But behind the costumes and the candy, the spirit of Samhain still whispers. Beneath the laughter, there lingers something older, a memory of the night when the dead returned, when the veil grew thin, and when humanity faced the coming dark with courage, ritual, and flame. Every flickering candle, every carved pumpkin, every story told in the half-light is a faint echo of that ancient truth. So when the wind howls across the rooftops, when the air feels different and the world seems to hold its breath, remember what this night once was. Remember the fires that burned on the hills, the ancestors who walked unseen, and the people who looked into the darkness and chose to light a spark against it. For this is Samhain, the night when the world turns over, when time stands still, and when the living and the dead share the same breath beneath the fading stars. While the spectral fears born from the thinning of the veil haunted the imagination of the ancient Gaels, the festival of Samhain carried an equally vital and deeply human purpose. It was not merely a night of supernatural chaos, it was a season of profound order, the moment when the rhythm of life itself shifted and society rebalanced its fragile harmony before the long descent into winter. As darkness gathered and the chill deepened, the living did not retreat in fear. They assembled, they feasted, and they reaffirmed the very laws and customs that held their world together. While the Otherworld opened its doors to spirits and unseen beings, in the great halls of kings and chieftains, the courts of humankind also opened theirs. The timing of Samhain was not accidental. It marked the logical and necessary end of the pastoral year. The final crops had been harvested, the grain stored, and the herds of cattle, symbols of wealth and power, were driven down from the summer pastures in the hills. It was the end of the season of expansion, of hunting and warfare. Swords were set aside, and sickles laid to rest. For a sacred brief moment, peace itself became a law. By ancient custom, feuds, raids, and disputes were suspended. The clans could now gather without fear of bloodshed to conduct the solemn business of survival. Accounts were settled, alliances renewed, and preparations made for the harsh months ahead. The bounty of the harvest was transformed into celebration. Grain became ale and mead, and the return of cattle brought with it a grim necessity. Not all could be sustained through winter. A great slaughter followed, yielding an abundance of fresh meat for one final magnificent feast before scarcity returned. This union of plenty and peace made Samhain the perfect time for assemblies, grand gatherings where the life of a kingdom unfolded in all its brilliance. The medieval Irish tales tell of such feasts. In the 12th century legend, the intoxication of the Ulsterman King Conchobar of Ulster is said to have hosted a Samhain banquet at Emain Macha, his royal stronghold. The chronicler boasts that the king provided 100 vats of ale for his guests, a gesture that spoke not only of generosity, but of authority. It was not simply a feast, it was a display of kingship itself, a visible assertion of power and wealth that bound warrior to ruler, lord to subject. These gatherings lasted for a full week, 3 days before Samhain, the night itself, and 3 days after, filled with games, contests, poetry, judgment, and revelry. Yet beneath the laughter and music, a strict order prevailed. Tribute was paid, and obligations renewed. The ancient Brehon laws, the great legal codes of Ireland, declared that tenant farmers owed their chieftain an annual offering, often in the form of livestock. Among these tributes, the pig of Samhain held symbolic importance, representing the transfer of wealth from those who worked the land to those who defended it. Through this ritual act, the social fabric was rewoven and the unspoken hierarchies of Gaelic life reaffirmed. At the summit of this sacred order stood the legendary Feast of Tara. According to old texts, every 7th Samhain the High King of Ireland convened a great assembly at his seat of power upon the hill of Tara. There, before nobles, druids, and warriors, laws were recited, judgments proclaimed, and peace reaffirmed. It was said that any man who defied the decrees of the Samhain gathering would be cast out from the realm. Whether this account was myth or memory, it captured a truth at the heart of Gaelic culture. Samhain was not only the turning of the seasons, but the turning of the world itself. It was the moment when the people of Ireland, from the humblest farmer to the highest king, took stock of their lives, renewed their bonds, and prepared to endure the darkness together. Yet beyond the feasting halls and royal courts, the spirit of Samhain lived most vividly in the humble homes of the people. Within the smoky glow of peat fires and in cottages scattered across the wind-swept moors, ancient rituals continued, shaped by generations of quiet faith and fear. Here, Samhain was intimate and deeply personal, a time not of power, but of memory. Families gathered close, not to discuss politics or law, but to speak to the unseen. As the bonfires burned on distant hills, small rituals of folk magic were carried out in every village. Each act was a gesture of respect toward the friendly dead and a safeguard against those spirits less kind. The most solemn of these customs began in silence. When families sat down to their Samhain meal, an empty chair was drawn to the table, and upon it a plate of the finest food and a cup of the best drink were placed. This was not an empty seat. It belonged to the ancestors. It was believed that on this night, when the veil between worlds grew thin, the spirits of the family dead could return to share one final meal with their living kin. The family ate in absolute silence, listening for faint sounds, the creak of a board, the sigh of the wind, that might mark their arrival. It was known as the Dumb Supper, and it symbolized an act of hospitality that reached beyond life itself. But outside the safety of the hearth, the night belonged to darker forces. Not all spirits were gentle, and the paths between villages were said to swarm with tricksters, fairies, and restless souls. To venture out was to risk being taken by the unseen, and so people turned to disguise for protection. They wrapped themselves in animal skins or straw and wore carved masks of wood to conceal their human features. Some dressed as the opposite sex, creating confusion and chaos, a mirror of the spirit world where nothing obeyed mortal rules. These disguises were more than protection, they were performance. Groups of young men and women, known as geysers or mummers, wandered from door to door offering songs, poems, or playful mischief in exchange for food, drink, or coins. For one night, the rigid order of society was overturned, and laughter replaced fear. The living imitated the dead, and through that imitation, they tamed it. Samhain was also the night of prophecy. The veil that allowed the dead to return also allowed glimpses of what was yet to come. Simple games became rituals of divination, especially among the young. Apples, sacred symbols of the Otherworld, were central. Those who caught one in the water while bobbing were believed to be the first to marry in the coming year. Young women peeled apples in a single long strip, then tossed the peel over their shoulders, watching as it fell into shapes said to reveal the initial of their future husband. Even the fire became a tool of fate. Pairs of hazelnuts, representing lovers, were placed together on the hearth. If they burned quietly side by side, the match was blessed. If they cracked and jumped apart, discord was foretold. Through such rituals, people sought certainty amid uncertainty, some reassurance that love, luck, and life would endure beyond the encroaching dark. And when all else was done, the final act of protection was lit. In windowsills and by doorways, pale turnips were carved into grimacing faces and filled with glowing embers. These were the first jack-o'-lanterns, guardians meant to frighten away any wandering spirits that sought to enter the home. Their grotesque expressions were not made to amuse, but to warn, to turn back the malevolent with a reflection of its own terror. Centuries later, the pumpkin would replace the turnip, and the old rituals would transform into play. Yet, within the hollow glow of every lantern, within every mask and fire, the same ancient impulse remains, the desire to keep the darkness at bay, to find meaning in the turning of the year, and to stand together for one sacred night between the worlds of the living and the dead. For countless generations, the cross and the bonfire stood as the unchallenged law of the land, a spiritual truth as tangible as the turning of the seasons. Yet a new faith was beginning to rise across the Gaelic world, carried on the tides of empire and evangelism. It was a faith that proclaimed one omnipotent God and celebrated a host of saints and martyrs. The arrival of Christianity in Ireland and Scotland did not immediately extinguish the old ways. The roots of Samhain were too ancient, too deeply entwined with the rhythms of life to be easily uprooted. Instead, what followed was a long and intricate process of spiritual negotiation, a centuries-long dialogue between the old world and the new, culminating in a fragile synthesis of folk belief and church doctrine known as syncretism. The first great transformation came not through open conflict, but through a reordering of time itself. The Church, seeking to establish a sacred calendar for the Christian world, endeavored to impose a new universal order upon the seasons. In the year 835, Pope Gregory IV issued a decree that forever altered the destiny of the Gaelic festival. He proclaimed November 1st as All Saints' Day, a solemn occasion dedicated to the countless martyrs and saints who had died for the faith. Although historians note that this act was not an explicit attempt to suppress Samhain, its impact was profound. It placed one of the most significant Christian holy days directly atop the most sacred festival of the Gaelic calendar. Soon after, the Church added another layer. November the 2nd was declared All Souls' Day, a day devoted to prayer for the souls of the faithful departed, those believed to be undergoing purification in purgatory. Thus, a new theological framework emerged. The 3-day period from October 31st to November 2nd became known as All Hallowtide or Hallowmass. The eve of the celebration, October 31st, was henceforth called All Hallows' Eve, a name that over centuries softened and evolved into Halloween. For the Church, this was now a sacred season of vigil and prayer, a time for solemn remembrance of the Christian dead. Yet the people did not so easily abandon their ancient practices. The old ways endured, subtly reshaped and imbued with Christian meaning. The great Samhain bonfires were not extinguished. In many villages, they were simply reconsecrated as Hallowmass fires, their light now said to honor the saints or guide the souls of the departed toward salvation. The ancient tradition of guising, of masking oneself and going from house to house, persisted as well, though it adopted a new form known as souling. During this practice, the poor and children would go door to door offering prayers for the souls of the household's dead in exchange for soul cakes, small spiced confections often marked with a cross. What had once been a ritual of spiritual reciprocity between humans and spirits now became an act of Christian charity, binding the old Gaelic customs to the moral framework of the new faith. For centuries, this uneasy fusion endured, a testament to the endurance of the old religion beneath the surface of Christian piety. But in the 16th and 17th centuries, this balance was violently disrupted by the Protestant Reformation. To the new Protestant authorities, particularly in Scotland, these blended traditions were not harmless folk remnants, but dangerous remnants of idolatry. The old bonfires, the divination games, the masquerades, these were not quaint amusements, but the unmistakable works of the devil. They denounced them as papist superstitions, heresies that must be eradicated, And so the theological hammer fell. Ministers and magistrates alike imposed bans. Bonfires were extinguished by decree, and the playful rituals of divination were condemned as witchcraft. What had once been a night when the veil between worlds grew thin was now declared a night when the gates of hell were open. The repression was devastatingly effective. The public celebration of Samhain vanished from many communities, driven from the fields and village greens into the private shadows of the home. In secret, the old rites endured, quietly, defiantly, kept alive in remote glens and on distant islands by those who refused to forget. The soul of Samhain went underground, awaiting the day it would rise again, not in its native homeland, but across the ocean, upon the shores of a new world. As the 20th century unfolded, Halloween began its transformation from a half-remembered folk custom brought by immigrants into a fully realized American institution. The mischievous spirit that had once belonged to guising adults passed into the hands of the nation's children. Yet their pranks, once light-hearted, often spilled into vandalism and petty crime. Fences were torn down, windows were soaped, and outhouses overturned. To quell the growing disorder, communities across the country, especially in the American Midwest, devised a new solution: organized festivity. Towns began to host public parades, costume contests, and community gatherings. The aim was to channel youthful mischief into supervised family-friendly celebration. Thus began the taming of the holiday, its transformation from an unpredictable night of chaos into a wholesome civic occasion. But the true catalyst for modern Halloween arrived after the Second World War. The post-war economic boom, the rise of suburbia, and the birth of a powerful consumer class created ideal conditions for the festival not merely to be celebrated, but to be sold. The informal custom of trick-or-treating, once confined to scattered localities, exploded in popularity during the 1950s. It became a cherished rite of passage for the children of the baby boom. And where children went, commerce followed. Candy manufacturers, once focused on Christmas and Easter, recognized a vast, untapped market. They began to produce small, individually wrapped sweets and launched aggressive advertising campaigns linking their brands directly to the joy of trick-or-treating. Across magazine pages and television screens, cheerful children appeared in store-bought costumes, receiving handfuls of shiny, packaged confections. The humble soul cake, the apple, the handful of nuts, all offerings that once carried sacred meaning, were replaced by the glittering promise of mass-produced candy. This process of commercialization accelerated through the 1960s and 1970s, spurred by a new and distinctly modern kind of folklore, the urban legend. A wave of fear swept through the nation, fueled by sensational media reports of strangers poisoning Halloween treats or hiding razor blades in apples. The myth spoke to a growing unease within the suburban landscape, a fear of the unknown neighbor, the unseen danger, the loss of communal trust. Though almost entirely baseless, the panic changed Halloween forever. Sociologist Joel Best, who devoted decades to studying the phenomenon, found no verified case of a child being killed or seriously harmed by tampered candy. The few tragic incidents that did occur were acts of domestic crime, not the work of faceless monsters. Yet, the legend persisted, more powerful than truth itself. In its wake, homemade offerings vanished. Only sealed, factory-made candy was deemed safe. The irony was profound. The myth of poisoned sweets, though false, completed the industrialization of Halloween. Candy manufacturers became the new custodians of tradition, their logos replacing ancient symbols of harvest and fire. By the century's end, the metamorphosis was complete. Halloween had become a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Its landscapes were no longer misty hills or shadowed groves, but the fluorescent aisles of the seasonal superstore. Its sacred fires had been replaced by plastic pumpkins filled with confectionery. The deep, unsettling questions of mortality and the spirit world had been reduced to a single, cheerful inquiry. What are you going to be for Halloween? The ancient festival that once stood at the threshold of life and death had been refashioned in America as an image, a spectacle of color, laughter, and consumption. The old gods had not merely been forgotten, they had been replaced by the new gods of the marketplace. And yet, the story does not end there. Beneath the bright lights and laughter, a quiet rebellion began to stir. Among those who hungered for something deeper than plastic masks and commercial cheer, a movement emerged to rediscover the soul of the lost festival. In the latter half of the 20th century, modern paganism, a diverse collection of spiritual paths including Wicca and Celtic Reconstructionism, rose to prominence. For these practitioners, Samhain was no relic of history, but a living, sacred day, the Celtic New Year, marking the final harvest and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. In clearings and suburban homes alike, covens gathered to relight the ancient fires. They built altars adorned with photographs of their beloved dead, surrounded by autumn leaves, skulls, and candles. They left offerings of bread and wine, revived the silent dumb supper, and performed acts of divination, using mirrors, flames, or tarot to peer through the thinning veil between worlds. These were not perfect recreations of ancient rites, but acts of spiritual archaeology, conscious efforts to recover fragments of a forgotten world and weave them into a faith for the modern soul. At the same time, in Ireland and Scotland, a renewed pride in Gaelic heritage flourished. Samhain was no longer dismissed as superstition, but embraced as a cornerstone of cultural identity. Public celebrations arose once more, most famously the Samhain Fire Festival in Edinburgh. Each year, thousands gather on Calton Hill to witness a grand reenactment of the eternal battle between summer and winter. A living pageant of drummers, fire, and myth that culminates in the lighting of a massive bonfire. This is not ancient worship, but modern remembrance, an act of art, heritage, and collective spirit. In a globalized world, it is essential to remember that while humanity shares a universal reverence for the dead, each culture expresses it through distinct traditions. Modern Halloween, rooted in Gaelic soil, is often mistaken for other festivals such as Mexico's Dia de los Muertos. Though both honor the departed, their origins and symbols are profoundly different, one born from Celtic fire, the other from the union of Aztec and Catholic devotion. To conflate them is to erase the very histories that grant them meaning, and so we return to the question with which we began: what became of the ancient soul of Samhain? From the wind-swept hills of Iron Age Europe, through its uneasy union with Christianity, to its rebirth in the New World, we have traced its long and turbulent journey. The answer is clear. The soul of Samhain never truly died. It merely changed form. Today, two festivals coexist. One is bright, noisy, and commercial, the ghost of the old, asking only for our participation in its spectacle. But beneath it, the older rhythm still beats. It echoes in the drum fire of Scotland's hills, in the whispered prayers of pagan circles, and in the quiet act of lighting a candle for the departed. The true heart of Samhain lies not in costume or candy, but in the timeless human need to face the darkness, to honor the dead, and to gather together against the cold. The forms may change, the names may fade, but the ancient fire still burns, waiting in the deepening dark for any who choose to remember. As we trace this long journey from the sacred bonfires of Iron Age Ireland to the glowing plastic pumpkins of suburban America, we discover that Halloween is not merely a holiday, but a mirror reflecting the evolution of human belief itself. Its transformation reveals how societies rewrite their fears and hopes through the language of ritual. What was once an encounter with mystery and mortality has become a spectacle of light, laughter, and consumption, and yet, beneath that spectacle, the same ancient heartbeat endures. Critically, this history reminds us that no tradition truly dies. It adapts, reshaped by the powers that govern each age. The Church once redefined Samhain to serve faith, empire, and order. Later, capitalism reimagined it to serve industry and commerce. And today, amid digital distraction and cultural noise, we are witnessing another quiet reclamation, a return to meaning, to ancestry, to the primal need to face darkness together. So perhaps the true lesson of Halloween is this: the ancient fire still burns, but it depends on us to keep it alive, not just through costumes and candy, but through remembrance, reflection, and awareness of where these rituals came from and what they once meant. If this exploration helped you see the real story behind Halloween, then keep that flame alive. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another journey into the forgotten histories that still shape our world. Because every story, like every fire, needs someone to keep it burning.